Welcome to chapter 19. This is another chapter where I feel like you're not getting quite as much practice in something that's kind of important as you should be. I think you'll find the exercise for this chapter, which is 19b, I want to say, to be fairly simple. But you do have a new tense in this chapter, so it is important to talk about it for a second. The verb tense is called the perfect tense. There's a few past tenses in Latin. There's imperfect, there's perfect, and then there's something called pluperfect, which will show up at the end of this book. But for now, imperfect is a past tense verb. Imperfect are verbs like, well, I have an example here, which I'll get to, but it typically means like somebody was doing something, or somebody used to do something, or they started to do something, or they kept doing something. So it's kind of like a kind of, it can have a sense of an ongoing action in the past, or something that used to happen habitually over and over again. But the perfect tense comes from the from the Latin words per and facere, and it means facere means to do, and per means through. So literally, it means like done through, in the sense of like when you do something all the way through. It's completed. I mean, that really is the sense that you're looking for. It's completion. Something is has been it's done, and it's over, right? As opposed to that imperfect sense of something being done in the past over and over again, let's say. Um, so we say verbs in the perfect tense are completed in a way that imperfect tense are kind of not. And this is, as I say, odd because they're both in the past. If they're both in the past, then how are they not both completed? So this is not the most important distinction in the world for Latin, but it can make the shades of meaning in translating certain things much clearer if you have a real sense of what an imperfect verb can be and what a perfect verb can be. Because sometimes it really just makes more sense to say, I have done this already. I have already done this, as opposed to I was already doing this. There's a difference in those things, right? And that difference is reflected in the distinction between imperfect and perfect tense. So here's the example here. Servi laborabant in agris. We see that BA in there. We know this is imperfect tense. So that sentence means something like the slaves were working in the fields. Yesterday, the slaves were working in the fields, or the slaves kept working in the fields. Again, that sense of action that is ongoing, but in the past, they were working. Like you can have the sense of the slaves sitting there and continuing to work as you think about what they were doing yesterday, right? But this, oh, wait. I forgot to change this. Sorry, this should be servi. Laboraverunt. This is a new perfect ending that I think you'll see as you do the exercise for 19b. Laboraverunt is perfect tense, and that means literally the slaves worked in the fields, and now they are done. They worked. They have worked in the fields, right? And now they have gone to bed, and that work is over now. So imperfect tense is more like you would sort of when you're telling a story. Like yesterday, the slaves were working in the fields while I was looking out for the messenger, or something like that, right? They were working. But yesterday, the slaves worked in the fields, has the sense of it's completed, it's over. It's not like really like a storytelling type of verb. So I think that's all I'll really say about the distinction between those two tenses for now. And we can have a look at, well, you should read carefully page 150 into page 151, just to get a sense of not only how to recognize perfect verbs. Like you can see that some new letters show up here, or sometimes the form changes entirely. And this will be clear. This will be clarified, like as to um, how this all works in the future. And it's not a perfect science, but notice for now that there is a difference between musat, which means mutters, and musavit, which means muttered. So I really think you should read this stuff down here about stem markers. Let's see. Yeah. There's V's or S's or U's or X's in the middle of perfect verbs. Like you think of duco ducere, which means to lead. Now we have dux instead of ducere. So that will mean something like he led or we led, right? And then there's so V, S's, U's, and X's do show up in perfect tense. It's not the only way you can recognize them, but that is a big one. VSUX, V sucks. I tell my students, they seem to find that amusing. Um, and then sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference between a present tense verb and a perfect tense verb, because look at the difference here. I mean, the only difference is there's this longer E instead of here. So now this is now Euclides arrives, and now Euclides arrived or has arrived. So read those carefully so that you can recognize perfect verbs. And then they ask you to do a little practice in 19b, which is the exercise that's due for this week, along with 19a, I guess. So you have a chart, and you need to set up a chart in a Word file or something like that. And what you're given is just the third person singular and the third person plural forms of, and then the first one has all five of these filled in. So intravit means he or she or it entered. Notice the V, as I said before. And intraverunt is the plural of that. So intravit, intraverunt. He, she entered, they entered. The stem marker, as is discussed on the previous page, or yeah, these are called stem markers right there. You should really, as I say, read the whole thing here, and then it'll be clearer. Note what that stem marker is here. It's this V that shows that it's the perfect tense here. It's sort of how you recognize it. Then you give the infinitive of the verb. Entrare means to enter, and then you give the meaning of that infinitive right here. So for the first one, you can probably deduce these quite easily. If the singular of intraverunt is intravit, then the singular of custodiverunt is custodivit. So the third person endings for perfect tense are this. This is third singular is it, and third plural is erunt, and that's a long E there actually. So it and erunt are going to appear on the end of all of these verbs. So custodive is called the perfect stem, and then erunt is the ending. So we take that same stem, custodive, and then we put an it onto it for singular instead of an erunt for a plural. So this will be custodivit. And here again we'll see that there is a V in there to mark that perfect stem, or that perfect tense, right? And then the infinitive of this verb is custodire. It's a fourth conjugation verb, custodire. Custodire, and that should be a long I there, and then that will be to guard there. So that would be the second line there. Custodivit with a V here, custodire, and to guard. And basically you have to do that for all of these. So I think if you just use that sort of formula that I use for this one here, for this one right here, then the rest of them should sort of make sense. Just one more here. This is timu it, right? So we know the ending is timu is it. So we're going to take that same perfect stem timu. I'm going to bring that over here, timu, and then we're going to have the ending for third person plural, timu erunt. So here that marker is not going to be a V, but it's going to be the U. So read carefully all the stuff on perfect tense, and I think you'll recognize some of these. I mean, you can see there's a whole lot of perfect tense verbs in here now in the story itself. Intraverunt, they entered. You sit, instead of you bet, like he orders, now we have you sit for he ordered. Duxit for he led. So we see the X there. We had a V here. We have an S there. Is there one more? This erunt is also a perfect verb. Um, Gemuit. Well, yeah, no, I thought there was a Gemuit in here. In the story, maybe there is. I thought well, yeah, I think Aurelia groaned when she saw this disgusting bed that was in the inn. She's like, I can't sleep here. Are you kidding me? Look at this place. And this guy's like, oh boy, oh, we got one of these. So that's it. Take a look at the notes on the perfect tense, and I think that 19b should be quite easy if you read that carefully. Okay, good luck.